Billionaire pretends to be homeless to find a humble wife, but the cleaning woman shocks him. Richard William Bennett was exhausted by women who only saw his bank account. At 42 years old, the businessman had accumulated a billion-dollar fortune with his textile industries, but every relationship ended the same way: interest in his money, not in him. The idea came to him when he was looking out the window of his office in downtown New York City. In the square across the street, a woman in a blue uniform was sharing her sandwich with a homeless man. That simple scene awakened something in Richard that he thought he had lost long ago: the hope of finding someone genuine. The next day, Richard disguised himself. He put on old clothes, dirtied his face, and positioned himself in the same square where he had seen the woman in the blue uniform. He wanted to test if she would repeat the gesture. Sarah Mitchell was finishing her shift at Mercy General Hospital when she spotted the man sitting on the park bench. Her dark hair was tied in a simple bun, and her brown eyes reflected the tiredness of someone who had been working since 5 in the morning. Walking beside her was Ethan, an 8-year-old boy with delicate features and a clever look. "Mom, that man over there looks hungry," said Ethan, tugging on the sleeve of his mother's uniform. Sarah looked at Richard in disguise and her heart tightened. Even with only 2 slices of bread in her bag, she approached him. "Good afternoon. Would you like a sandwich?" she offered in a soft voice. Richard was surprised. He didn't expect her to be so direct without beating around the bush. He accepted the bread and watched as she sat down next to him on the bench. "Thank you, Mom. You didn't have to." "Of course I did. Everyone deserves to eat," replied Sarah, while Ethan played with a broken toy car at their feet. Richard noticed her simplicity, but something bothered him. When he took the sandwich, Sarah glanced quickly at his wrist, where he had forgotten to hide an expensive watch. She said nothing, only smiled differently. "Do you have family?" asked Sarah. "No, at least not anymore," lied Richard, testing her reaction. "Everyone has someone. Sometimes we just don't know where to look," she said, standing up. "Come on, Ethan, we need to go." As they walked away, Richard heard Ethan ask quietly, "Mom, why was that man wearing such a nice watch if he has no money?" Sarah's answer left him cold. "Maybe he found it, son. Or maybe appearances are deceiving." Richard realized he had been found out, but something in the way she spoke showed no judgment. It was almost as if she understood that everyone has their reasons for pretending to be someone else. For the rest of the week, Richard returned to the square every day. Sarah always appeared with Ethan and always brought something for him. They talked about life, about New York City, about how people change over time. Richard discovered that she worked 3 different shifts: cleaning at the hospital in the morning, cooking at a diner in the afternoon, and cleaning an office at night. "Why do you work so much?" asked Richard on a Thursday. "Ethan needs some special things. Therapies, appointments. It's expensive but worth every penny," explained Sarah, ruffling her son's hair. Richard noticed that the boy seemed different from other children, quieter, more observant. His questions were too smart for his age, and he seemed to understand adult conversations with unusual ease. "Your son is very clever," commented Richard. "It's a blessing and a challenge at the same time," sighed Sarah. "Ethan sees the world differently from other children. The doctors say it's a special condition, that he needs follow-up care." On Friday, when Richard arrived at the square, he found Sarah crying on the bench. Ethan wasn't with her. "Mrs. Mitchell, what happened?" asked Richard, forgetting for a moment to keep up the charade. "Ethan is in the hospital. He had a crisis last night," she explained, drying her tears. "The doctor said he needs surgery, but it's very expensive. The public hospital has a 6-month waiting list." Richard felt like revealing everything at that moment, to offer all his fortune to help. But something stopped him. Perhaps it was fear that she would reject him upon learning of the deception. "How much does the surgery cost?" he asked cautiously. $200,000. "It's more money than I'll ever save in my entire life," said Sarah, her voice choked. Richard stayed awake all night. On Saturday morning, he decided to look for Sarah at the hospital. Still in disguise, he asked at the reception about Ethan Mitchell. "Only family members can visit," said the receptionist. "I'm a family friend," insisted Richard. That's when he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Sarah, this time without a uniform, wearing simple but clean clothes. "It's okay, he can come up with me," she told the receptionist. In the elevator, Richard realized she knew exactly who he was. "You found out, didn't you?" he asked. "Richard William Bennett, owner of RWB Industries, one of the richest men in the country," said Sarah calmly. "I found out on the second day." "How?" "Your watch cost more than my salary for 10 years. Besides, you talk like someone who went to an expensive school and never really went hungry." Richard felt exposed and ashamed. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to understand your intentions, and because Ethan liked you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. They arrived at the room where Ethan was staying. The boy was connected to several machines, but his eyes lit up when he saw Richard. "How came to visit me?" said Ethan enthusiastically. "Of course I came, champ. How are you?" "The doctors say I need brain surgery. Mom is worried, but I'm not scared." Richard looked at Sarah, who was trying to keep her composure in front of her son. "Ethan, can you stay here a bit? I need to talk to your mom," said Richard. In the hallway, Sarah got straight to the point. "If you came to offer money, forget it. I don't accept charity." "It's not charity, it's that I care about both of you." "Why? Because we're an interesting social project for your conscience." "No." Richard raised his voice, then controlled himself. "Sorry. That's not it. You two reminded me of who I was before I got rich." Sarah studied him in silence. "My grandmother always said that money doesn't change people, it just reveals who they always were. You pretended to be someone else to get to know me. That tells me a lot about who you are inside. You're right, it was wrong of me. But Ethan likes you, and he's never wrong about people." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. No one had ever liked him simply for who he was, without knowing about his fortune. "Let me help with the surgery. Not as charity, but as someone who cares." Sarah was silent for a long moment. "If you do this, it will be with conditions. I'll pay you back, even if it takes 20 years. "Sarah, $200,000 is nothing to me. But it's everything to me, and I won't owe something I can't repay." Richard admired her dignity. None of the women he had met before would have rejected easy money. That night, Richard canceled all his appointments and spent time researching Ethan's condition. He discovered the boy had a rare syndrome that affected neurological development, but with proper treatment, he could lead a completely normal life. On Sunday, he returned to the hospital with a proposal. "What if you came to work for me?" suggested Richard. "Cleaning supervisor at my offices. The salary would be enough to pay for the surgery in installments, and Ethan would have health insurance." "Why would you do this?" "Because I need someone I can trust, and you're the most honest person I've ever met." Sarah considered the proposal. It was a unique opportunity, but something bothered her. "And if I say no, will you leave and never come back?" The question caught Richard off guard. He realized he wasn't just offering help out of kindness. He wanted a reason to stay close to her. "I don't know, I hope you don't say no. I need to think. It's a lot all at once." On Monday, while Richard waited for Sarah's answer, he received an unexpected visit from his personal assistant at the office. "Mr. Bennett, I found out where you've been spending your mornings," said Michael, his assistant of 15 years. "So what? The press could find out. A billionaire pretending to be homeless? That would be a scandal." Richard hadn't thought of that. His business reputation could be shattered. "Besides, I looked into that woman. Sarah Mitchell, 35 years old, single mother. Works 3 different jobs and lives in a neighborhood in the South Bronx." "What's your point, Michael?" "My point is that this could be a gold-digging scheme. She found out who you are, and now her son conveniently needs an expensive surgery." Richard was furious at the insinuation, but a small seed of doubt was planted in his mind. Was Sarah manipulating the situation? That afternoon, he decided to confront her. He arrived at the hospital and found Sarah in Ethan's room, reading a book to him. "We need to talk," said Richard. They went out to the hospital garden, where Richard got straight to the point. "How long did you know who I was before you told me?" "Since the first day." And didn't you think it was convenient that your son needed exactly an expensive surgery? Sarah's face completely changed. She looked at him with a mix of hurt and anger. You think I set this all up? That I used my sick son to con you? I don't know what to think. Then let me make it clear. Ethan has had this condition since he was born. I have all the medical prescriptions from the last 8 years to prove it. And if you think I made all this up, you can leave right now. Sarah, No. You've said enough. Ethan asked about you this morning. I had to explain that you probably wouldn't be coming back. Sarah walked away, leaving Richard alone in the garden. He realized he had just destroyed the only real thing he had found in years. On Tuesday, Richard couldn't work. He kept imagining Ethan at the hospital, asking where his friend was. He decided to go back, but when he got there, he found out they had been discharged. He got Sarah's address from the hospital administration and went to the South Bronx. It was the first time he had ever been in a neighborhood like that, and he was impressed by how people greeted each other, as if they had known each other for generations. He found Sarah's house, a simple 2-room building. When he knocked on the door, it was Ethan who answered. "Uncle Richard, you came," shouted the boy, throwing himself into his arms. "Ethan, go back inside," said Sarah, appearing behind her son. "Sarah, please, I need to apologize. You made it perfectly clear what you think of me. I was wrong, completely wrong." Ethan looked from one to the other, not understanding the tension. "Mom, he's my friend. Why are you mad at him?" Sarah sighed and invited Richard inside. The house was small but tidy. On the living room wall there were pictures of Ethan from when he was a baby, and in each one it was evident that he had always been different from other children. "Ethan, go play in the backyard for a little bit," Sarah asked. When they were alone, Richard tried to explain. "My assistant said it could be a scam. I wanted to believe it wasn't, but the doubt came up because you've never met someone like me," interrupted Sarah. "In your life, everyone wants something in return. Here in my life, we help each other because it's the right thing to do. You're right. I live in a bubble. I knew who you were from day one, Richard, but I chose not to say anything because I saw you were trying to be someone different, and I liked that someone." "What do you mean?" "The Richard in the park was kind, humble, talked to me like I was important, not like the billionaire who looks at me and sees just a poor cleaning lady." Richard realized she was right. When he was in disguise, he really did behave differently. "Ethan likes you very much," continued Sarah. "He never knew his father, so seeing a man treat him well means a lot." "Where is his father?" asked Richard, curious. "He left when he found out about Ethan's special condition, said he didn't want a defective son." Anger took hold of Richard. How could someone abandon a child? "Ethan isn't defective at all. He's brilliant." "I know, but not everyone can see past the limitations." At that moment, Ethan came running back into the house. "Mommy, Mrs. Thompson is yelling at Mr. Wilson again. She said he drank all the rent money." Sarah sighed and stood up. "I need to go over there. Mrs. Thompson is our neighbor, and when she gets upset, her blood pressure goes up." "Can I go with you?" asked Richard. "Are you sure? It's not exactly the kind of environment you're used to." Richard followed Sarah to the house next door, where a white-haired lady was arguing with a man at the door. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to calm down," said Sarah, putting a hand on the elderly woman's shoulder. "Sarah, my dear, he spent $300 on drink. How am I going to pay the rent?" Richard watched Sarah mediate the situation with patience and kindness. She talked with Mr. Wilson, who was clearly remorseful, and helped the couple find a solution. "Mr. Wilson is going to work extra at the Sunday market to make up the money," explained Sarah, "and I'm going to hold on to his wallet until Monday." "But Sarah, you already have your own problems," protested Mrs. Thompson. "Neighbors are the family we choose, Mrs. Thompson." Richard was impressed with how Sarah solved the problem without judgment, just with compassion and practicality. On the way back, Ethan asked, "Uncle Richard, do you have a family?" "I have a mother and a brother, but we don't talk much." "Why?" Richard thought before answering. "How do you explain to a child about inheritances, jealousy, and sibling rivalry? Sometimes people in the same family want different things out of life. Like when I want to watch cartoons and Mommy wants to watch the news." Sarah laughed at the comparison. It's a little like that, son. That night, Richard couldn't get the conversation out of his head. How many years had it been since he'd had an honest conversation about family? How many years since he truly cared about another person's problem? The following Wednesday, Richard arrived at the park and didn't find Sarah. Worried, he went to her house and discovered Ethan had taken a turn for the worse during the night. "The doctor said we can't wait any longer," explained Sarah, visibly shaken. "I need to find the money somehow. Sarah, let me help. No conditions, no work contracts, just as someone who cares about you. I can't accept." "Why not?" "Because when you get tired of playing at being humble, you'll go back to your billionaire life, and we'll go back to our usual life. And Ethan will suffer another loss." Richard understood it wasn't about pride. It was about protection. Sarah was protecting her son's heart. "What if I prove it's not a game? What if I show you that you are truly important to me?" "How?" Richard thought fast. "I needed something concrete, something that would show your commitment. I'm going to sell one of my companies. I'll use the money to create a medical treatment fund for children like Ethan. You will manage the fund." "Richard, that's crazy. It's the first sensible thing I've thought of doing in years. And your businesses? Your fortune?" "They'll continue to exist, but now they'll have a real purpose." Sarah fell silent for a long time. "Would you really do that?" "I'm already doing it. I called my lawyer before coming here." At that moment, Ethan called for his mother from the room. When they entered, he had a high fever. "Mommy, I'm scared," the boy whispered. "You don't need to be scared, sweetheart. Everything will be all right." "Uncle Richard, will you stay here with me?" Richard looked at Sarah, who nodded. "Of course, champ, I won't leave." And Richard truly didn't leave. He spent the night at the hospital, sometimes comforting Ethan, sometimes talking quietly with Sarah about fears, dreams, and plans for the future. In the morning, he received a call from Michael. "Mr. Bennett, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about the sale of the company." Richard stepped out into the hallway to take the call. "What is it, Michael?" "Your brother Andrew is trying to stop the sale. He called a board meeting and is claiming that you are not in a sound mental state to make important decisions." "He can't do that." "Yes, he can. He owns 30% of the shares and has gained support from 2 other board members." Richard hung up the phone, frustrated. Andrew had always been jealous of his success, but he never imagined he would go this far. When he returned to the room, he found Sarah speaking quietly with Ethan. "Did something happen?" she asked. "Trouble with my brother. He's trying to stop me from selling the company." "Why?" "Because he thinks I'm crazy for wanting to help you." Ethan, who seemed to be sleeping, opened his eyes. "Uncle Richard, is your brother like the father who left?" The boy's innocent question hit Richard like a punch. "What do you mean, Ethan?" "Mom told me my father left because he didn't like me the way I am. Doesn't your brother also not like it when you're being good?" Richard was speechless. An 8-year-old had perfectly summed up the problem. "You know what, Ethan? You're right, and I won't let him stop me from doing what's right." On Monday, Richard faced the company's board. Andrew had prepared a complete dossier on his brother's erratic behavior. "Richard is spending company money on questionable personal projects," argued Andrew. "And he's making emotional decisions that could hurt all of us." "The company I'm selling is my personal share, not the partnership's," Richard countered. "But your actions affect our corporate image. A billionaire pretending to be a beggar. That's sensationalist newspaper headline material." Richard looked around the boardroom table. Older, well-dressed men who had never cared about anything beyond profits. "Do you know what my biggest mistake was?" asked Richard. "It was thinking that financial success was the only thing that mattered in life." "Richard, you're talking like you've turned into a hippie," mocked Andrew. "I'm talking like someone who has finally found a reason to use money wisely." The meeting ended in a stalemate. Richard left determined to find another way to get the money for Ethan. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Sarah more nervous than usual. "What happened?" asked Richard. "The public hospital got a spot for Ethan. The surgery would be on Friday." "But that's great." "I don't know. The doctor there isn't a specialist in Ethan's condition. He said the chances are lower, but it's what we have." Richard made a decision on the spot. "No. Ethan will have the surgery right here with the best specialist." "Richard, You said your brother blocked the sale. My brother may block the sale of the company, but he can't stop me from using my personal money. Won't that cause problems for you? Problems? Sarah, for the first time in my life, I'm doing something that truly matters. If it causes problems, so be it. On Thursday, the day before the surgery, Richard was at the hospital when Andrew appeared unexpectedly. "So this is where you've been spending your time," said Andrew, looking around. "What do you want here?" "To meet the woman who managed to bewitch my brother." "Andrew, leave. This isn't the place for your provocations. On the contrary, this is exactly the place. I want to see if she's really worth all this trouble." At that moment, Sarah appeared in the hallway carrying a tray of food. "Richard, I brought you a sandwich for—" She stopped upon seeing Andrew. "Sarah, this is my brother, Andrew." "Nice to meet you," said Sarah politely. "The pleasure is mine," replied Andrew with a smile that Richard recognized. It was the same smile he used when he was about to make a lucrative deal. "Sarah works here at the hospital," explained Richard. "What a coincidence. I was thinking of making a donation to this hospital. Perhaps we could discuss the most urgent needs." Richard saw the trap, but Sarah responded before he could intervene. "How kind of you. But all donations go through administration. I'm just in housekeeping." Modest, too. Richard always had good taste. "Andrew," warned Richard. "Sorry, I didn't mean to be inappropriate. It's just that I rarely see my brother interested in social causes." Sarah looked from Richard to Andrew and back to Richard. "I'll take this to Ethan," she said, walking away with the tray. "Impressive," commented Andrew when they were alone. "She really doesn't seem interested in money, because she isn't interested." "Everyone is interested in money, Richard. Only the price changes." "You're wrong." "We'll see," said Andrew with that calculating smile. "I bet I can get her to accept an offer by the end of the day." Richard felt anger rising within him. "Don't even think about trying." "Relax, brother. I just want to understand what kind of person managed to change you like this." For the rest of the afternoon, Richard watched nervously as Andrew moved through the hospital, talking to staff and patients. He was plotting something. At 6 in the evening, when Sarah was finishing her shift, Andrew approached her in the parking lot. "Sarah, can I speak with you for a minute?" Richard followed them at a distance. "I want to make you an offer," said Andrew. $500,000 for you to walk away from my brother." "Excuse me?" Richard is confused. "This phase will pass, and when it does, you'll both get hurt. Better to end it now, with a good compensation." Sarah was silent for a moment and Richard felt his heart race. "You know what amazes me most about rich men?" Sarah finally said. "You think everyone has a price. Everyone does. Is your brother worth $500,000 to you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you have that much money to spare, why not help the children in need directly? Why do you need to use money to separate people?" Andrew hadn't expected that response. "You don't understand. I'm trying to protect both of you. Richard will tire of this game and you'll be left high and dry." "It's not for you to decide whether I'll tire or not," said Richard, appearing behind Andrew. "Richard, I was just trying to help. By lying to her, offering a bribe." "It's not a bribe, it's realism. You can't sustain this fantasy forever." "What fantasy?" "That you and her have a future together. You're from completely different worlds." Sarah interrupted the argument. "He's right, Richard. We are from different worlds." Richard felt the ground open up beneath his feet. "Sarah, but that doesn't mean we can't build a new world together," she finished, surprising both brothers. "What do you mean?" asked Andrew. "Your brother offered me $500,000 to leave. I'm going to accept it." Richard was devastated. "But with one condition," Sarah continued. "I want him to donate that money to the public hospital where Ethan would have his surgery, so other children can have the chances my son will have." "That's—" Andrew began. "Brilliant," Richard finished, smiling for the first time in days. "Andrew, you just financed the first project for our medical fund. I never agreed to any of this. But you offered the money in front of witnesses," said Sarah. "I imagine a man of your word wouldn't go back on it." Andrew realized he had fallen into a trap built on the public questioning of his own goodness. "Fine, but this settles everything between you." "No," Richard said firmly. This is just the beginning. On Friday, the day of Ethan's surgery, Richard arrived at the hospital at 5 in the morning. He found Sarah in the chapel praying silently. "Scared?" he asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong?" "It won't. Ethan is strong, just like his mother." "Richard, I need to tell you something before the surgery." "What is it?" "If anything happens to me, I want you to take care of Ethan." "Nothing will happen to you." "But if it does?" "Promise?" Richard looked into her eyes and saw the unconditional love she felt for her son. "I promise, but promise me one thing too." "What?" "That you'll stop working 3 jobs. Ethan will need his mother at home when he gets out of the hospital." "Richard, I need to work. Not 3 shifts, not even 2. Work with me on the medical fund project. Fair salary, normal hours, and close to home." Before Sarah could answer, a nurse came to get them. It was time to take Ethan to the operating room. The boy was calmer than the adults. "Mummy, when I wake up from the surgery, will you be here?" "We will, sweetheart." "Both of you?" Sarah looked at Richard, who nodded. "Both of us," she confirmed. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Richard and Sarah stayed in the waiting room, sometimes talking, sometimes in silence. At 3 in the afternoon, the doctor appeared. "The surgery was a complete success," he announced. "Ethan will have a completely normal life." Sarah broke down in tears of relief. Richard hugged her, and for the first time since they'd met, she didn't resist. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. Thank you for teaching me what really matters." 2 weeks later, Ethan was discharged. Richard had turned part of his office into a space for the social project, and Sarah worked there as the coordinator. "How are you feeling?" Richard asked on a Tuesday afternoon. "Strange. I've never worked in a place where people respect me," Sarah admitted. "Get used to it. You deserve it." Ethan, who was playing in a special area of the office, came running over to them. "Uncle Richard, can I ask you something?" "Of course, champ." "Do you like my mum?" Richard was embarrassed, but answered honestly, "I like her very much." "And she likes you too. Why don't you get together?" Sarah turned red. "Ethan, these things are complicated for adults." "No, they're not. You like each other, you take care of each other, and I like you both." "What's the complication?" Richard and Sarah looked at each other, realizing an 8-year-old boy had perfectly summarized the situation. "You're right, champ," said Richard. "There is no complication." That evening, Richard took Sarah and Ethan to dinner at a simple restaurant in their neighborhood. He didn't want to impress with luxury. He just wanted to be with the family he had chosen. "Richard," Sarah said as Ethan played with other boys in a small nearby park, "are you sure this is what you want? A simple life without the glamour you're used to?" "Sarah, in the last 2 months I've learned more about happiness than in the previous 40 years. I'm absolutely sure." "And your brother, your family?" "My family is you now. Andrew will have to accept it or be left out." "I don't want you to lose your family because of us." "I'm not losing. I'm gaining." 3 months later, Richard, Sarah, and Ethan were living in a comfortable but not showy house in Park Slope. The social project had grown and was now serving 15 children with special needs. "Mum, can I call Uncle Richard Dad?" asked Ethan one Saturday morning. "Only if he wants to," replied Sarah. "I'd love that," said Richard, ruffling the boy's hair. "So now we have a real family?" asked Ethan. "The realest family there is," confirmed Richard. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. 6 months after Richard and Sarah's simple wedding, life had found a balance neither of them thought possible. The house in Park Slope had become a true home, with Ethan's drawings on the refrigerator and plants that Sarah insisted on caring for personally. The social project, named the Ethan Mitchell Foundation, was now serving 50 families and had caught positive media attention. Richard discovered that using his influence for real causes brought a satisfaction no business had ever provided. "Dad, can I ride my bike to school today?" asked Ethan one Monday morning. Richard still got chills every time the boy called him Dad. It was a pure happiness that no money could buy. Yes, but be careful on the streets, deal? Deal! Ethan had developed remarkably after the surgery. He was still a special child, but now had all the tools to express his unique intelligence. Sarah appeared in the kitchen, wearing a light blue dress that Richard had given her as a gift. She still wasn't completely comfortable with expensive clothes, but was learning to accept indulgences. "The meeting with the doctors is at 10, she reminded him. "Right. Do you think they'll approve the project expansion?" "I'm sure. The results speak for themselves." Richard admired Sarah's confidence. She had transformed into an exceptional manager, combining practical knowledge with emotional sensitivity. At the Institute, the meeting went better than expected. 5 hospitals wanted to implement the care model they had developed. "This means we'll need many more resources," commented Sarah. "And many more people involved," added Richard. "Are you afraid it might grow too much?" "A little. I like the control we have now over each case. But imagine how many children like Ethan we can help." Richard smiled. Sarah always thought of others before herself. That afternoon, they received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Thompson, Sarah's neighbor from her old house, had managed to get the address and came by to thank her in person. "Sarah, my dear, you saved my life," said the 70-year-old woman with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Thompson, that's an exaggeration. What happened?" "That appointment you made for me at the Institute. The doctor found a heart problem that could have been serious if not treated in time." Richard watched the scene with emotion. Even after changing her life, Sarah continued caring for the people left behind. "And Mr. Wilson?" asked Sarah. "He's fine. Stopped drinking after you talked to him. Said he didn't want to disappoint you again." "Mrs. Thompson, that's his merit, not mine." "It is your merit. You saw the good man behind the problems." After Mrs. Thompson left, Richard spoke with Sarah about something he'd been thinking about for weeks. "I have a proposal for you." "What is it?" "How about we go back to your old community once a week, to keep the project going there too?" "You would do that?" "I'd do anything to see that sparkle in your eyes when you help people." Richard William Bennett, who would have thought you'd become a romantic? I learned from the best teacher. That evening, after Ethan fell asleep, Richard and Sarah stayed on the porch talking about the future. "Sometimes I still can't believe all this is real," Sarah confessed. "Why not?" "Because it seems too good to be true. A poor cleaning woman who marries a billionaire and gets to work in a field she loves. You're not a poor cleaning woman who married a billionaire," said Richard, taking her hand. "You're the strongest, most generous woman I've ever known, who happened to marry a man who was lost in life until he found you." "Richard, it's true. I was unhappy, Sarah. Rich, but completely empty. You and Ethan gave me purpose. And you gave me hope. I was so tired of fighting alone. You'll never be alone again." The following month, Richard made a decision that even surprised Sarah. He sold most of his companies and created a permanent foundation for children with special needs. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked when he told her about the sale. "I am. I kept just enough for us to live comfortably. The rest will make a difference in the lives of thousands of children." Andrew must be furious. Andrew can keep his anger. I've discovered I don't need anyone's approval to be happy. Andrew's reaction was exactly as expected. He showed up at their house on a Thursday evening, agitated. "Richard, you've gone completely mad," he shouted as soon as Richard opened the door. "Keep your voice down. Ethan is studying." Ethan, ever since that boy came into your life, you've done nothing but crazy things." "Andrew, stop. You're being ridiculous." "Ridiculous? You donated $400 million. $400 million. So what? So what? That was our inheritance too." Richard finally understood the real reason for his brother's anger. "Andrew, you already have your own fortune. Why do you care so much about mine?" Because you always had everything. You were always Mom's favorite, always more successful in business. And now you even have a perfect family." The confession caught Richard off guard. He never realized Andrew felt inferior. "Andrew, I never wanted to compete with you." "But you competed our whole lives, even without realizing it." Sarah, who had been listening from the kitchen, approached the two men. "Andrew, may I ask you a question?" she said calmly. "Go ahead." "Do you have children?" "No, never wanted any." "A wife?" "I've had several. None worked out." "Close friends?" Andrew hesitated before answering. "A few. So you have everything money can buy, but you have nothing that money can't buy. So what? So you're jealous of your brother for the wrong reasons. Richard isn't happier because he donated money. He's happier because he chose to love. That's self-help nonsense. It's reality. When was the last time you did something for someone without expecting anything in return?" Andrew fell silent. "That's exactly it," Sarah continued. "You're alone because you chose to be alone. Money is a tool, not a goal. And what do you suggest I do? Become a saint too? I suggest you start small. Try to make one person smile without getting anything in return." Andrew left that night still irritated, but Sarah's words kept echoing in his head. A week later, he showed up at the foundation unannounced. "I came to see this revolution you're making," said Andrew, but his tone was different. Richard accompanied him on a tour of the facilities. They saw children doing physical therapy, others learning in adapted classrooms, parents receiving psychological guidance. "Impressive," admitted Andrew. "How many children do you care for?" 63, replied Sarah, who had joined them. "And the results?" 80% of children show significant improvement within 6 months, Sarah explained proudly. Andrew watched Ethan playing with other children. The boy had become a sort of mentor to new patients, helping them adapt. "He seems happy," commented Andrew. "He is happy," confirmed Richard. "He discovered he's not the only different one in the world." "And you? Don't you miss your previous life?" "Previous life?" Richard laughed. "Andrew, I didn't have a previous life, I just had an expensive existence." That afternoon, Andrew asked to speak with Richard in private. "I want to apologize," he said. "You were right about everything. Thank you, but you don't need to apologize. I understand your anger." "No, you don't understand. I sabotaged you before." "How so?" "Remember Sandra, that lawyer you dated 5 years ago?" "I remember. She ended it out of nowhere, said I was too emotionally closed off. I offered her $50,000 to break up with you." Richard was shocked. "Why?" "Because she was genuine. She didn't care about your money. She actually liked you. I was afraid you'd be happy, and I'd still be alone." "Andrew, there's more. Patricia, the designer from 2 years ago, I also paid her to leave." "How many times did you do this?" 3, maybe 4. Whenever I saw someone truly cared about you." Richard felt anger, but also a deep sadness for his brother's loneliness. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I saw how Sarah looks at you, and I saw how you look at her, and for the first time in my life, I was jealous of something money can't buy." "What do you want from me, Andrew?" "Forgiveness, and maybe a chance to learn to be a better person." Richard looked at his brother and saw for the first time vulnerability in his eyes. "There's an opening at the foundation, financial coordinator, normal salary, no special perks." "You'd hire me after everything I did?" "I would, but with one condition: you treat Sarah with the respect she deserves." "Deal." That night, Richard told Sarah everything. "I knew," she said calmly. "Knew what?" "That he had sabotaged your previous relationships." "How?" "Because I know the type. People who use money to control others. But I also saw he's changing. Do you think I should give him a chance?" "I think everyone deserves a second chance, even those who don't deserve it." "Why are you so kind?" "Because my grandmother taught me that holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal. The one who gets burned is us." Richard hugged Sarah, amazed by her simple wisdom. The following Sunday, they received a visit nobody expected. Richard's mother, Mrs. Charlotte, appeared at their door. "May I come in?" asked the elegant 68-year-old woman. "Of course, mother. Come in." Mrs. Charlotte observed the house with curiosity. It was comfortable but simple, very different from the mansions she was used to. "So this is the woman who stole my son's heart," she said, looking at Sarah. "Mother, please, "I'm being polite," said Mrs. Charlotte. "I came to meet my daughter-in-law and my grandson." Ethan appeared in the living room, curious about the visitor. "Hi, Grandma," he said naturally. "Grandma?" Mrs. Charlotte was surprised. "That's what Ethan calls all ladies he respects," Sarah explained diplomatically. "Interesting. And what do you like to do, Ethan?" "I like helping the other children at the foundation, and I like cooking with Mommy. Want to see my cake recipe?" Mrs. Charlotte spent the afternoon with Ethan, who completely won her over with his spontaneity and intelligence. "Sarah," said Mrs. Charlotte before leaving, "may I speak with you for a minute?" "Of course. I want to apologize. I judged you before getting to know you." "You don't need to apologize, Mrs. Charlotte." "Oh, but I do. I thought you were interested in the family's money, but I see how you treat my son and how you've raised Ethan. You're a better mother than I ever was." "I'm sure that's not true." "It is. I raised two sons who competed against each other instead of supporting one another. You raised a boy who only wants to help others. Ethan is truly special. And so are you. Welcome to the family, my dear." The hug between the two women sealed a friendship neither had expected. 2 years later, the Ethan Mitchell Foundation became a national benchmark in caring for children with special needs. Richard had discovered a talent for social administration he never knew he had. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" said Ethan one afternoon as they organized donations. "Of course, son. Why did you pretend to be homeless when you met Mom?" Richard stopped what he was doing. Ethan, now 10 years old, was asking increasingly profound questions. "Because I wanted to be sure someone liked me for who I am, not for what I have." "And did you find out?" "I discovered much more than that. I discovered that who I am is far more interesting than what I have." "Were you sad before you met us?" "Very sad, Ethan, even with all that money. And now I'm the happiest person in the world." Ethan smiled and went back to organizing the donated toys. Richard watched his son and felt immense gratitude for the lesson this special child had taught him. Happiness isn't bought, it's built. That evening, Sarah found Richard on the porch, looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, snuggling up beside him. "I'm thinking about how a lie brought me to the greatest truth of my life." "What truth?" "That I didn't need to pretend to be someone else to be loved. I just needed to find the right people to love." "Richard, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. I always knew you were a good person from the very first day." "How?" "By the way you looked at Ethan. It wasn't with pity, it was with genuine interest. Few adults look at him that way. Ethan is easy to love." "He is, but not everyone can see that. You saw it in your first conversation." "And you? When did you decide you could trust me?" "When you visited Mrs. Thompson with me. I saw that you truly cared about people who couldn't offer you anything in return." "They offered me far more than any millionaire client ever did," said Richard. "They offered authenticity." 3 years had passed since their first meeting in the square. The Ethan Mitchell Foundation had grown into a network with 15 units across the country. Richard had learned to balance managing the businesses he kept with his social work. "Dad, can I make a special request for my birthday?" asked Ethan one Saturday morning. "Of course, son. What do you want?" "I want you to tell our story in a speech." "Our story?" "How you and Mom met, how you helped me, how we created the foundation, so other people can see that change is possible." "Ethan, that's very personal." "Dad, how many children like me are out there? And how many wealthy fathers like you could help if they knew how?" Sarah, who was listening from the kitchen, approached them. "He's right, Richard. Our story could inspire others." "You wouldn't mind the exposure?" "If it helps more families, it's worth it," Sarah replied. 1 week later, Richard took the stage at New York City's largest convention center to tell his story. In the audience of 300 business leaders sat Sarah in the front row, with Ethan beside her. "4 years ago, I was the richest and loneliest man in New York City," Richard began. "Today I'm just rich, but I've discovered that just being rich is already too much wealth when you have true love. The lecture was a success. 15 business people committed to creating similar social projects. But the most moving moment was when Richard saw Ethan standing and applauding, with immense pride shining in his eyes. After the lecture, a journalist approached them. "Mr. Bennett, what would you say to other business people who think social responsibility is just marketing?" Richard looked at Sarah and Ethan before answering. "I'd say they're missing the best part of life. Success without purpose is just empty accumulation. And you, Mrs. Mitchell, what's it like to leave poverty and become a billionaire's wife?" "I didn't leave poverty," Sarah answered calmly. "I brought my life experience to enrich his life, and he brought the resources to amplify what I was already doing, taking care of people." Interesting perspective. It's the only true perspective. Love isn't about changing social classes. It's about two people deciding to build something greater together. The article came out in the National magazine 2 weeks later with the headline, "The Billionaire Who Pretended to be a Beggar and Discovered True Love." The response was enormous, and hundreds of people reached out offering help to the foundation. "I never imagined our story would get so much attention," commented Sarah. "I think people are thirsty for real stories," answered Richard. "For true love, for genuine change. Or maybe they're realizing that happiness has nothing to do with bank accounts." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 6 months after the article, Richard received a call that would change everything again. It was from a woman who introduced herself as Catherine Parker. "Mr. Bennett, I read the article about your story and need to speak with you urgently." "About what, Mrs. Parker?" "About Ethan, about who he really is." Richard was confused. "What do you mean? Can I meet you in person? It's better if we talk face to face." The following Saturday, Catherine appeared at their house. She was a 50-year-old woman, well-dressed but simple, with features that vaguely reminded them of Ethan. "Thank you for having me," she said, visibly nervous. "How can we help you?" asked Sarah. "Actually, I came to help you, or at least clarify some things." Catherine took a folder from her bag and placed old photos on the living room table. "This is a photo of me when I was 20, she showed them. "And this is my son, Kevin, at the same age." Richard and Sarah looked at the photos, then looked at Ethan, who was playing in the backyard. "The resemblance is striking," commented Sarah. "It's not just resemblance, Ethan is Kevin's grandson." "What do you mean?" asked Richard. "Kevin is Ethan's biological father. He was my only son." Sarah turned pale. "Kevin died in a work accident when Ethan was 2, continued Catherine. "He never knew he had a son." "But how did you find out about Ethan?" "Through the magazine article. When I saw his photo, I immediately recognized the family features. And when I read that the father had abandoned you, I knew I had to clarify everything." "You mean Kevin didn't abandon us by choice?" asked Sarah, her voice choked. "Never. Kevin was looking for you when the accident happened. He had found out about the pregnancy a week before and was gathering the courage to find you." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. All those years she had believed she'd been abandoned because she was the mother of a special needs child. "Why didn't he look for me sooner?" she asked. "Because you had moved and changed your phone number." "And Kevin was proud. He thought you didn't want him to know about the baby." "I did. My, how I did." "He wanted to too. Kevin always wanted to be a father." Catherine turned to Richard. "And you, Mr. Richard, thank you for being the father Kevin couldn't be." "Mrs. Catherine, Ethan is an amazing boy. I'm proud to be his father. May I ask a favor?" asked Catherine. "Of course. I'd like to get to know my grandson better, not to interfere with your family, but to be part of it, if you'll let me." Richard and Sarah exchanged glances. After so many surprises, one more wouldn't make a difference. "Ethan," called Sarah. "Come here, son." The boy came running in, still with dirt on his hands from playing in the garden. "Ethan, this is Mrs. Thompson. She is your real father's mother," Sarah explained carefully. "My grandma?" Ethan asked simply. "If you want me to be," replied Catherine, her eyes full of tears. Of course I do. Now I have 2 dads, 1 mom, and a grandma. Ethan's simplicity in accepting additional love into his life moved all the adults present. "Grandma Catherine, do you want to see my room?" asked Ethan. As Catherine went upstairs with Ethan, Richard hugged Sarah. "Another twist," he commented. "But this time a good twist," she replied. "Are you okay? I know it must be hard to discover the truth about Kevin. I'm relieved. All these years I carried a hurt I didn't need to carry. And now? Now I can tell Ethan beautiful stories about his biological father. He deserves to know he was wanted." That night, after Catherine left, promising to return on the weekend, Richard and Sarah talked about how to integrate one more person into the family. "She seems lonely," observed Sarah. "She lost her only son. It must be a terrible pain. Ethan can help heal that pain. He has that gift of making people feel special." "Just like his mother," said Richard, kissing Sarah's forehead. The next month, Catherine became a constant presence in the house. She had recently retired and had a lot of free time. Ethan loved hearing stories about the father he never knew, and Catherine loved having a grandson to spoil. "Grandma, was my dad like me when he was little?" asked Ethan one afternoon. "Exactly the same. He asked smart questions and always wanted to help everyone." "And would he be proud of me?" "He would be very proud, my grandson." Richard watched these conversations with emotion. Ethan was discovering a part of his identity that had always been missing. One day, Andrew showed up at their house with an unexpected proposal. "I want to increase my share in the foundation," he announced. "How so?" asked Richard. "I want to donate half my fortune too." "Andrew, are you sure?" "I am. In the last few months working with you, I've learned more about personal satisfaction than in my entire previous life." "What changed?" asked Sarah. "I met a volunteer teacher at the foundation, Rachel. She made me see that I was wasting my life trying to compete with ghosts." "You're in love," said Richard, smiling. "I am, and terrified. She isn't impressed by money, doesn't want expensive gifts. She just wants me to be a better person." "Welcome to the club," laughed Richard. "It's scary but liberating." "How did you win Sarah over?" "I didn't. I stopped trying to win her over and started trying to deserve her." The foundation's 3-year anniversary party was held in the foundation's own hall. All the families served, employees, volunteers, and donors were present. Ethan, now 11 years old and fully recovered, gave a speech that moved everyone present. 3 years ago, I was just a different boy who needed medical help. Today I am a different boy who helps other different boys. The difference hasn't changed, but my way of seeing it has. And that happened because my family taught me that being different isn't being less, it's being special." The audience gave a standing ovation. Richard and Sarah embraced, proud of the son they had raised together. "I also want to thank my father," continued Ethan, "who taught me that family isn't just blood, it's choice. And my grandma Catherine, who tells me stories about my other father so I know I was always loved even before I was born." Catherine wiped away tears, moved by her grandson's words. "And I want to thank my mother, who taught me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about always getting back up." Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. After the party, while they were putting away the decorations, Andrew approached Richard. "Rachel accepted my marriage proposal," he announced. "Andrew, what wonderful news." "She had one condition. She wants a simple ceremony just like yours." "And you agreed?" "I agreed to everything she asked, including living in a normal house without butlers or drivers." "How do you feel about that?" "Anxious and happy, very happy." Richard hugged his brother, pleased to see that Andrew had finally found his path. 6 months later, it was Richard and Sarah's turn to celebrate a special occasion. Ethan had been accepted into a specialized school for gifted children. "Dad, can I keep helping at the foundation even while studying at the new school?" asked Ethan. "Of course you can, son. The foundation is yours too. I'll miss seeing the other kids every day. You can visit them on weekends, and there are holidays too." "Dad, can I ask one more question?" "Always, Ethan." "Are you and Mom going to have more children?" Richard was surprised by the question. "Why do you want to know?" Because it would be cool to have a little brother or sister, to teach them about our crazy family. Crazy? Laughed Richard. Yeah, a family where the dad pretended to be a beggar, the mom shared food with strangers, and the son needed brain surgery. If that's not crazy, I don't know what is. And you'd want siblings in a crazy family like that? I'd love to. Crazy family is the best family there is. That night, Richard and Sarah talked about the possibility of expanding their family. Do you want to have more children? Asked Richard. I always have, but I never had the means to provide a good life for more than one child. And now? Now I have the means, and I have the best father in the world to help me. Sarah, you make me feel like I'm capable of anything. Because you are. You changed your entire life to become the person you wanted to be. I didn't change to become, I changed to go back to being. What do you mean? The person I met when I was pretending to be a beggar wasn't fake. It was me without the masks that money forced me to wear. And now? Now I don't need masks anymore. I have a family that loves me exactly as I am. 1 year later, Sarah gave birth to a girl who was named Charlotte in honor of the paternal grandmother who had become a second mother to Ethan. Charlotte's birth completed the family in a way none of them had expected. Ethan became the most protective and caring brother a child could have. Dad, now we really have a complete family, said Ethan at the hospital holding his newborn baby sister. You think so, son? I'm sure. It's the four of us, plus Grandma Catherine, plus Grandma Charlotte, plus Uncle Andrew and Aunt Rachel. And all the kids at the foundation are kind of our family too. That's a pretty big family, laughed Richard. Big family is happy family. 2 years later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Richard received a phone call that left him worried. Richard, I need to see you urgently, said Andrew on the other end of the line. What happened? I can't talk about it on the phone. Come to the foundation alone. Richard arrived at the foundation and found Andrew in the office with an expression he couldn't decipher. What is it, Andrew? You're scaring me. Richard, I discovered something about Sarah's past that could change everything. What kind of thing? Remember how you always thought it was strange she figured out your identity so quickly? Yes, she said it was because of the watch. It wasn't just because of the watch. Andrew showed a folder with documents. I hired an investigator to research her past, not out of malice, but to protect the foundation from potential legal problems. And what did you find? Sarah studied business administration in college. She graduated with honors, had a scholarship, was one of the best in her class. Richard was confused. And what's the problem with that? The problem is that she deceived you, Richard. She's not an uneducated cleaning lady. She's a college-educated business administrator who chose to work as a cleaner. That doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. She graduated right before Ethan was born. When she discovered he had special needs, she accepted any job that offered flexible hours and pretended to be less educated than she really is. Richard felt the world spinning. Could it be possible that Sarah had also pretended to be someone else? There's more, Andrew continued. She recognized you not because of the watch, but because she studied your company in college. She did a thesis on corporate social responsibility, and your company was one of the cases studied. Are you saying she knew who I was even before I disguised myself? I'm saying it's quite possible. Her college work was about how wealthy businessmen could use their fortunes for social causes. Richard sat down, trying to process the information. Richard, does this change anything for you? Asked Andrew. I don't know. I need to talk to her. Maybe you should think carefully before confronting her. Richard spent the rest of the day confused and anxious. When he got home, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner, with Charlotte on her lap and Ethan helping cut vegetables. Dad, shouted Ethan, I'm making salad. That's great, son. Can I help? Of course. Grandma Catherine taught me a special recipe. The normality of the domestic scene contrasted with the storm in Richard's head. How to confront Sarah about this in front of the children? After dinner, when Ethan went to do homework and Charlotte slept, Richard decided to approach the subject. Sarah, I need to ask you something. What is it? You've been acting strange since you got home. Andrew told me you have a degree in business administration. Sarah stopped washing dishes and turned to him. So what? So you never mentioned that. You let me believe you were just a cleaner with no formal education. Richard, I never lied to you about that. But you didn't tell the truth either. Did you ever ask about my education? Richard thought and realized she was right. He had assumed she had no formal education without asking. But why work as a cleaner if you're a business administrator? Because cleaning has flexible hours. Business administration doesn't. Ethan needed a present mother, not a professionally successful mother. And why didn't you tell me after we got married? Because you fell in love with the humble cleaning lady. I was afraid you wouldn't like the ambitious business administrator. Sarah, I fell in love with you, with the person you are, not with your profession. So it doesn't matter whether I have a degree or not. Of course it doesn't matter, but it bothers me that you hid this. Richard, you pretended to be a beggar for weeks. I just didn't mention my education. Who hid more things? Richard realized she was right again. Is there anything else I don't know about you? Many things. Just like there are many things about you that I still don't know. Like what? Like the fact that you speak 3 languages, were a chess champion in your teens and play piano. How do you know that? Because I paid attention. In 4 years of marriage, do you think I wouldn't discover who you really are? Richard laughed at his own paranoia. I'm sorry, I guess the scare made me think nonsense. Richard, want to know why I really fell in love with you? Why? It wasn't because you pretended to be humble. It was because when you found out I knew who you were, you didn't try to buy me off or impress me. You just kept being kind. And why did you fall for an administrator disguised as a cleaner? Because you saw value in someone who thought they had none. And you gave me courage to dream big again. That night, Richard understood they had both worn masks at the start of their relationship, but unlike hiding flaws, they had hidden qualities out of fear of not being accepted. The following week, Richard suggested Sarah go back to using her academic background. How about you do a graduate degree in social organization management, he suggested. Richard, I don't have time to study. Yes, you do. We can hire a nanny for Charlotte, and Ethan is practically independent already. But the foundation? The foundation will benefit from you having even more knowledge. You won't think I'm neglecting the family. Sarah, you took care of Ethan alone for 8 years while working 3 shifts. I think you can handle graduate school. Actually, Sarah hesitated. I always wanted to get a master's. Then let's do it. Which university do you want? The same one I graduated from. They have a specific program for social management. Perfect, I'll call tomorrow to get information. But when Richard called the university, he discovered there was a 2-year waiting list for the program. Unless, said the coordinator, the applicant has an ongoing social project that can be used as a case study. What if she does? Then we can consider a special spot for next semester. Richard hung up excited. The foundation would be the perfect master's project for Sarah. When he told her, Sarah was thrilled. You mean I can study and work at the same time? Exactly. And in the end you'll have a master's degree, and the foundation will have a complete academic analysis of our methodology. Richard, this is amazing. You deserve it, love. You always have. 6 months later, Sarah was in her first semester of the master's program and loving every minute. She discovered she had a natural talent for academic research and scientific methodology. How are the studies going? Richard asked one evening. Challenging, but good. I'm learning theories that scientifically explain what I always did by intuition. For example, family mediation techniques, applied child psychology, resource management in social organizations. Things I did naturally, but now I understand why they work. That will make the foundation even better, and it will make me a better professional too. Ethan, who was doing homework at the living room table, joined the conversation. Mom, when you graduate with your master's, will you be a doctor? Not yet, son. A master's makes you a master. To be a doctor, I need to do a doctorate after. And will you do it? I don't know. It depends on many things. Like what? Like if the foundation keeps growing, if our family is doing well, if I can balance everything. I think you should do it, said Ethan. Imagine how many children you could help if you became a real expert. Richard smiled at his son's maturity. Ethan is right, he agreed. If you want to do a doctorate, we'll find a way to make it all work. Would you really support me? Always, Richard and Ethan answered at the same time. At that moment, Charlotte started crying in her crib. Sarah went to get her daughter and returned to the porch with the baby in her arms. "Look at our family," said Richard, watching Sarah holding Charlotte while Ethan leaned against him. "Our crazy family," corrected Ethan, repeating the joke from years past. "The happiest crazy family in the world," added Sarah. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" whispered Ethan. "Of course, son. I always knew you weren't really a homeless man." "What do you mean?" "Your teeth were too clean, and you talked just like the doctors at the hospital." "And why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted you to stay, and I knew if I said anything you might leave." Richard hugged Ethan tightly. "I'm never leaving, son, never." "I know. Now I know." 5 years had passed since that first meeting in the square. Richard looked out the window of his office at the foundation and saw the square where it all began. The bench where he sat pretending to be homeless was still there, and he smiled, remembering how different things were back then. Ethan, now 13, had become a bright and socially engaged teenager. Charlotte, at 4 years old, was already showing signs of the same emotional intelligence that ran in the family. "What are you thinking about?" asked Sarah, entering the office. "I'm thinking that if someone had told me this story 5 years ago, I never would have believed it." "Why not?" "Because I was too cynical to believe in happy endings. And now? Now I know happy endings exist. They're just not endings. They're beginnings." "Beginnings of what?" "Of a life worth living." Sarah moved closer to him, and they looked out the window together. "Richard, can I make a confession?" "Always." "On that first day in the square, when you were in disguise, I knew you were pretending, but I didn't mind." "Why?" "Because I saw you were trying to find something, and I was searching too." "Searching for what?" "Hope. Hope that there were good people in the world. People who could help Ethan have a better life." "Did you find it?" "I found so much more than hope. I found love, family, purpose. I found a future I never dreamed was possible." Richard kissed Sarah gently. "Thank you for believing in the fake homeless man. Thank you for believing in the janitor with dreams of being an administrator." Just then, Ethan ran into the office. "Dad, Mom, Charlotte said a new word." "What was it?" asked Sarah. "Family. She was playing with her stuffed animals and said family." Richard, Sarah, and Ethan ran to the room where Charlotte was playing on the floor. When she saw them, the little girl smiled and repeated, "Family." The 4 of them hugged on the floor in a happy, laughing pile. "You know what's the funniest thing about all this?" said Richard. "What?" asked Sarah. "I was looking for a humble wife, and I found so much more. I found a partner, a business associate, a best friend, and the mother of my children, all in the same person." "And I was just looking for an opportunity to give Ethan a better life," replied Sarah. "And I found a husband, a father for him, an extended family, a career I love, and a life's purpose." "We both pretended to be other people to meet each other," said Richard, "and we discovered that the people we were pretending to be were more real than the people we thought we were," Sarah completed. Ethan, listening to the conversation, made an observation that perfectly summed up everyone's journey. Maybe everyone should pretend to be a homeless person or a janitor for a day, to remember that in the end we're all just people who want to be loved. Richard looked at his son, impressed by his early wisdom. "Ethan, where did you learn to think like that?" "From both of you. You taught me that what matters isn't what we pretend to be, but who we choose to be when no one is watching." That night, after the children were asleep, Richard and Sarah stayed on the porch planning the future. "The foundation is already serving 300 children," commented Sarah, "and we have requests to open branches in 5 states. Do you think we should expand that much?" "I think we should expand as far as we can maintain quality. The day it becomes just about quantity, we stop." "I agree. Ethan always says it's better to help a few people well than to help many people poorly. He learned that from you. He learned that from life. Special needs children understand the value of individual attention better than anyone." "Sarah, can I ask you a serious question?" "Of course." "Are you happy?" "Truly happy?" "Richard, 5 years ago I was a single mother, working 16 hours a day, and afraid my son would never have a normal life. Today, I have a wonderful family, work in a field I love, and see Ethan flourishing every day. Do you think I'm not happy? It's just that sometimes I wonder if you don't miss the independence you had before. I miss the financial independence I never had. Sarah laughed. But I don't miss the loneliness. Are you sure? Richard William Bennett, after 5 years of marriage, you still doubt that I love you. I don't doubt the love. Sometimes I doubt if I deserve it. Of course you do. You gave up everything you knew to build a new life. I didn't give up anything important. I traded empty things for things full of meaning. And I traded a life of constant struggle for a life of constant growth. Growth? Today, I'm a mother of 2, a wife, a graduate student, a coordinator of a foundation, and a bonus granddaughter to Mrs. Charlotte. 5 years ago, I was just a mother and a cleaning lady. Haven't I grown? You've grown a lot, and you taught me to grow too. The next morning, Richard woke up with a clear idea in his head. He wanted to do something special to celebrate the 5 years since they met. He called the florist and asked them to fill the square where they met with red roses, not to draw attention, but to turn the place into a small temporary work of art. "Sarah, can you join me for a walk?" he asked after lunch. "Where to?" "You'll see." They left the children with Catherine and went to the city centre. When they arrived at the square, Sarah was speechless. "Richard, what is all this?" "A way to say thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For believing in a stranger in disguise. For sharing your sandwich when you barely had enough to eat. For giving me a family when I didn't even know I needed one." "Richard." "And for pretending to be just a cleaning lady when you were actually a brilliant administrator who could have rejected me for lying." Sarah smiled, remembering the beginning of their relationship. "Do you know why I really didn't care about your lies?" she asked. "Why?" "Because I saw that you were desperate to be loved for who you were, not for what you had. And I was desperate for someone to see value in who I was, not pity for what I didn't have. We were both looking for the same thing: authenticity, real connection, true family." Richard knelt on the same bench where he sat 5 years ago. "Sarah Mitchell Bennett, will you renew our vows with me?" "Richard, are you crazy? We only got married a year ago." "Will you renew our vows with me every year for the rest of our lives, and why?" "Because I want to choose you again every year. I want you to choose me again too." Sarah knelt beside him on the bench. "I will, but on one condition." "What?" "Next time we bring Ethan and Charlotte to renew our vows as a family." Agreed. They kissed on the bench in the square, surrounded by roses and the certainty that they had built something rare and true together. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. 3 years later, the Ethan Mitchell Foundation had become an international model for caring for children with special needs. Delegations from other countries came to visit its facilities regularly. Richard was in his office on a Thursday morning when he received an official call from the federal government. "Mr. Bennett, this is the office of the Secretary of Education. Would you be available for a meeting next week?" "What is it regarding?" "The government is interested in implementing the Ethan Mitchell Foundation model in the national public system." Richard was thrilled. When he told Sarah, she had an unexpected reaction. "I'm worried," she confessed. "Why?" "It's everything we've dreamed of." "It's too big, Richard. How will we ensure quality in a national project?" "We'll find a way. We always do. And if we don't, what if it just becomes politics and bureaucracy?" Richard understood Sarah's concern. They had built something intimate and personal that could get lost in the government machine. On Monday, they went to Washington, D.C. for the meeting. The secretary welcomed them enthusiastically. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, your project is exactly what the country needs. We want to replicate it in every state capital." "Mr. Secretary," said Sarah, "our success comes from personalized care. How can we guarantee that on a national scale?" "That's an excellent question. We have a proposal. You would train the coordinators of each region for 1 year." "That would mean constant traveling," observed Richard. That's why we're offering generous compensation, $5 million for the consulting work. Richard and Sarah exchanged glances. It was a lot of money, but also a lot of time away from family. Can we think about it? Asked Sarah. Of course, but we need an answer by Friday. On the flight back to New York City, Richard and Sarah discussed the pros and cons. It's a unique opportunity to help thousands of children, argued Richard. But it's also a way to destroy our family, countered Sarah. Ethan is 16. He's at an important stage. Charlotte is 7 and needs stability. What if we found a way to do it without traveling so much? How? Online training, remote supervision, monthly visits instead of weekly ones. It might work, but I fear we'll lose quality control. When they got home, they found Ethan taking care of Charlotte and doing homework at the same time. The boy had become an exemplary big brother. How was the trip? He asked. Complicated, replied Sarah. The government wants to expand our project nationwide. That's great, said Ethan enthusiastically, but it means we'd have to travel a lot to train people, explained Richard. Oh, so not that great after all. Why not, son? Because family is more important than work. You've always taught me that. Ethan's simple wisdom clarified everything for Richard and Sarah. On Thursday, they called the secretary with their answer. We accept, said Sarah, but with our conditions. Which are? In-person training only once a month in each region. The rest will be done online. And we want each unit to maintain autonomy to adapt our methodology to local realities. That's acceptable. And the compensation? Use the money to better equip each unit. We don't want personal payment. Are you sure? Absolutely. Our payment is seeing the project working properly. 6 months later, the first public unit of the Ethan Mitchell Foundation was inaugurated in Chicago. Richard, Sarah, and Ethan traveled for the ceremony. Dad, what a strange feeling to be at an event about our foundation, commented Ethan. Strange why? Because so many important people talking about something that was born at our dinner table. The best things are born at family dinner tables, son. Do you think we'll be able to maintain quality everywhere? If we can't, we shut everything down and go back to working only in New York City. Really? Absolutely. Quantity can never be more important than quality. The inauguration in Chicago was a success. The local coordinator, an educator named Jennifer, had studied the methodology in detail and implemented everything perfectly. How did you manage to understand our proposal so well? Asked Sarah. Because I have an autistic son, explained Jennifer. I know firsthand how important it is to have personalized and humane care. So you'll take care of this place as if it were your own project. I'll take even better care, because now I have hope that my son will have opportunities I never imagined. On the flight back, Sarah was particularly quiet. What is it, honey? Asked Richard. I'm emotional. Jennifer reminded me of how I was 8 years ago. How so? Desperate to give the best to my son, but not knowing how. If there had been an institute like this when Ethan was little, there was. It was just waiting to be created. Richard, do you think we change the world, or the world changes us? I think we change the small piece of the world we can reach, and that's already revolutionary. Ethan, who was pretending to sleep, opened one eye. Can I give my opinion? Of course, son. I think you changed my world, and I changed your world, and together we changed the world of other children. It's like a domino effect of kindness. Domino effect of kindness, repeated Sarah. I like that expression. Can I use it in my school project? You can use it anywhere, Ethan. It's your life philosophy. 2 years later, there were 15 units of the Institute operating in different states. The model had proven to be sustainable and effective, maintaining quality even from a distance. Richard was turning 50 and reflecting on how his life had completely changed. 50 years and I feel like I'm just starting to live now, he commented to Sarah. Why? Because I finally understood what living is for. What is it for? To love and be loved. To make a difference in other people's lives. To create something that will continue to exist after we're gone. Will the Institute continue even after we're gone? Absolutely. Ethan has already said he wants to study social administration to take over management in the future. And Charlotte. Charlotte wants to be a pediatric doctor specializing in special needs. So our family will continue caring for special children forever. It's the best legacy we could leave. At Richard's 50th birthday party, held at the institute itself, the entire extended family they had built over the years was present. Mrs. Thompson, now 75, was playing with Charlotte in the garden. Catherine, now 65, was chatting animatedly with Andrew and Rachel about retirement plans. "Dad," said Ethan, now 18 and about to enter university, "can I make a toast?" "Of course, son." Ethan took a glass of soda and addressed the guests. "I want to toast the man who taught me that a father isn't who creates you, but who raises you. Who showed me that real wealth isn't in the bank but in the heart. And who proved that it's never too late to start life over." The whole party applauded. Richard approached Ethan and hugged him. "Thank you, son, for teaching me how to be a father. I'm the one who thanks you for choosing to be my father, even when you didn't have to." That night, after everyone had left, Richard, Sarah, and the children were tidying up the last details of the party. "Daddy," said Charlotte, tugging on his pant leg. "What is it, princess? Are you like the prince in fairy tales?" "Why do you think that?" "Because you saved Mommy and Ethan, just like princes save princesses." Richard crouched down to be at his daughter's eye level. "You know something, Charlotte? They saved me." "How?" "They saved me from loneliness. They taught me how to be truly happy." "So you saved each other?" "Exactly. Just like in the cartoons where everyone lives happily ever after. Better than in the cartoons, because our story is real." Charlotte smiled and ran to help Ethan put away the toys. "Richard," said Sarah, approaching him, "do you think our story really has a happy ending?" "It has no ending, Sarah. Our story has no ending because we're still writing it every day." "And if we had to sum it all up in one sentence?" Richard thought for a moment, looking at Ethan and Charlotte playing, at Sarah smiling beside him, at the house full of love and good memories. "I'd say two liars found each other and discovered the most important truth of all." "What truth?" "That true love needs no disguises or money. It just needs hearts willing to open up to each other." Sarah kissed Richard gently. "I love you, Richard William Bennett." "I love you, Sarah Mitchell Bennett, and I love you both," shouted Ethan from the living room. "Me too," shouted Charlotte. The whole family laughed at the children's spontaneity. 10 years had passed since their first meeting in the square. Richard walked down the same street where it all began, but this time he wasn't in disguise. He wore simple clothes, but only because he no longer felt the need to impress anyone. He stopped in front of the hospital where Sarah worked when they met. The place had been renovated and expanded, partly thanks to donations from the foundation. "Memories?" asked a familiar voice behind him. It was Sarah, who was just leaving a meeting at the hospital. "Many. I was thinking about the first time you offered me a sandwich. I was thinking about the first time you accepted it. What did you think of me that day? I thought you were a lost man pretending to be brave. And today I think you're a found man who discovered what real courage is. Real courage. The courage to love without guarantees, to change without fear, to build a life based on what matters, not on what impresses." Richard kissed his wife's hand. "And you? What did you think of me on the first day?" "I thought you were someone trying to escape from something." "You were right. I was trying to escape loneliness, emptiness, the feeling that my life had no meaning. And did I manage to escape?" "You managed much more than escape. You managed to find purpose." They walked together to the square, where a group of children was playing under the supervision of caregivers from the foundation. "Look," Sarah pointed, "our square has become a meeting place for families from the foundation. So the place where we pretended to be other people became the place where other people discover who they really are. It's poetic. It's perfect." They sat on the bench where it all began. Richard looked at Sarah, now 43, a doctor in social management and nationally recognized as an expert in child inclusion. "You've achieved all your dreams," he commented. "Not all. I still have a few." "Like what?" I want to see Ethan graduate and work at the foundation. I want to see Charlotte grow up and choose her own path. I want our family to stay close, even when the children are adults. And I want you to keep being the man I met in this square. Which one? The liar or the real one? The one who had the courage to lie to discover the truth. What truth did I discover? That you were always a good person. You just needed to remember that. That afternoon they returned home and found Ethan in the kitchen preparing dinner. At 21, he had become a responsible and caring young man, studying social administration at the same university where Sarah had done her master's and doctorate. "How was your romantic meeting in the square?" Ethan joked. "How do you know we went there?" asked Richard. "Because you always go there when you want to remember how you met. It's like a ritual of yours." "You're too observant," laughed Sarah. "I learned by paying attention to you two. You two are a living manual on how to make a relationship work." "Ethan, what an exaggeration." "It's not an exaggeration, Mum. How many couples do you know who renew their vows every year in the same park where they met?" "Not many," admitted Richard. "And how many couples do you know who build a social project together and manage to work together without fighting?" "Also, not many. So you are special. And Charlotte and I were lucky to grow up in a special family." Charlotte, now 10 years old, appeared in the kitchen after school. "What are you talking about?" "About how our family is special," explained Ethan. "We're special?" asked Charlotte. "Very much," confirmed Richard. "Why?" "Because we truly love each other," answered Sarah. "Don't all families truly love each other?" Ethan laughed at his sister's innocence. "Unfortunately not, Charlotte. There are many families who live together but don't truly like each other." "How sad." "That's why our family is special," explained Richard. "Because we choose to stay together every day, not just because we have to." That night, Richard was organizing old documents when he found a letter he had completely forgotten about. It was a letter from Kevin, Ethan's biological father, written shortly before his departure. The letter had been sent to Sarah's old address, but since she had moved, it never reached its destination. Somehow, the mailman returned it to the sender, and it ended up among Kevin's belongings that Catherine had kept. Catherine had given the letter to Richard months ago, but he had stored it without reading it, respecting Kevin's privacy. Now, 10 years later, he decided to open it. "Sarah, if you're reading this, it's because I managed to find your new address. I know you must be angry with me for disappearing, but you need to know the truth. When I found out you were pregnant, I was terrified. Not because I didn't want to be a father, but because I was afraid I wouldn't be a good father. My own father left when I was little and I didn't want to repeat history. But these months away from you made me realize that running away is exactly what my father did. And I don't want to be like him. I'm coming back. I want to be a father to our son. I want to build a family with you. I know it will be difficult at first, but we can make it together. I love you, and I love our baby, even though I haven't met him yet. Kevin." Richard read the letter twice before going to find Sarah. "What is it?" "You look pale," she said, looking at him. "I found a letter from Kevin to you." "A letter? But It was written shortly before the accident. He was coming back to you." Richard handed the letter to Sarah, who read it with tears in her eyes. "Wow," she whispered. "He was coming back. How are you feeling?" "Relieved and sad and happy at the same time." Explanation: relieved because he didn't abandon us by choice, sad because we'll never know how it would have been, and happy because Ethan can know that his biological father really wanted him. "Are you going to show him the letter?" "I will. He deserves to know." The next day, Sarah called Ethan for a private conversation. "Son, I have something to show you." Ethan read the letter in silence, with a focused expression. "So my father was coming back to us when the accident happened?" "He was. Does this change anything?" "Does it change anything for you?" Ethan thought for a long moment. "It does change. Now I know I was wanted by both my parents, by the one who conceived me and by the one who raised me." "How do you feel about that?" "Complete. As if a missing piece has finally fallen into place. Ethan, this doesn't change anything between you and Richard." I know, Mom. A father is the one who raises you, not the one who conceives you. But it's good to know that Kevin wanted me too. That night, Ethan asked to speak with Richard. Dad, can I ask you a difficult question? Always, son. Are you jealous of Kevin? Jealous? Why would I be? Because he's my biological father. Sometimes adoptive parents feel insecure about that. Richard thought carefully before answering. Ethan, when you were little and needed surgery, who stayed at the hospital with you? You. When you learned to ride a bike, who taught you? You. When you had your first crush at school, who talked to you about feelings? You. So I'm not jealous of Kevin, I'm grateful. Grateful? That he helped raise you. Even without knowing it, he contributed to you being who you are. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. You're the best father I could have, with or without Kevin in the story. Richard hugged Ethan, moved by his son's maturity. And you're the best son I could have, with or without blood ties. 3 months later, Catherine suggested they pay tribute to Kevin at the foundation. A room with his name, she proposed, so Ethan always knows he was loved by his biological father too. It's a beautiful idea, Grandma, agreed Ethan, but only if it's a special room. What do you mean? Asked Richard. A room where fathers who are afraid of not being good fathers can get guidance. So no father runs away out of fear, like Kevin almost did. Ethan, that's brilliant, said Sarah. A father support room. Kevin would like that, confirmed Catherine. He was always afraid of repeating his own father's mistakes. The Kevin Parker room was inaugurated 6 months later and became one of the most sought-after parts of the foundation. Young men who had just discovered they would be fathers came seeking guidance and support. You know the most beautiful part of all this? Commented Richard one evening. What? Asked Sarah. Kevin is helping other fathers, even though he's no longer here. His story is preventing other men from making the mistake of running away out of fear. It's as if he finally became the father he wanted to be. Exactly. Through the son he left behind. Ethan, who was listening to the conversation from the living room, joined them in the kitchen. Do you think Kevin would approve of our family? I'm sure he would, replied Catherine, who was visiting for the weekend. Why? Because you became exactly the kind of man he wanted to be. Kind, responsible, caring about others. And because your family is exactly the kind of family he dreamed of having, added Sarah. So in the end, everything worked out. Everything worked out more than well, son, said Richard. It worked out perfectly. 2 years later, at Ethan's graduation party for social administration, Richard gave a speech that summarized the family's entire journey. 14 years ago, I was a lost man who pretended to be a beggar to find love. Today, I'm a found man who discovered that true love isn't something you search for, it's something you build. Ethan isn't just my son. He's my teacher, my partner at the foundation, and living proof that when we choose to love without conditions, we receive love without limits. Sarah isn't just my wife. She's my partner in life, my daily inspiration, and the one who taught me that true wealth is measured in relationships, not in dollars. Charlotte isn't just my youngest daughter. She's our constant joy, and the one who keeps us grounded when we start taking ourselves too seriously. Catherine isn't just a mother-in-law by circumstance. She's the grandmother Ethan deserved to have, and the one who teaches us that family expands with love, it doesn't shrink. And Mrs. Thompson, my mother, who learned from me to be a better grandmother than she was a mother, proving it's never too late to grow. This crazy family, as Ethan always says, taught me that pretending to be someone else is sometimes necessary to discover who we really are, and that lying about our identity can be the path to finding our truth. The audience applauded emotionally. Ethan went up on stage and hugged Richard. "Thank you for pretending to be a beggar," he whispered in his father's ear. "Why?" "Because if you hadn't pretended, I never would have met my real father." End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of love and transformation? Tell us in the comments if you believe true love can really change a whole life. Your opinion is very important to us.